Hello there, YouTube audience. This is Kills for Food, and I know it's been a while since I uploaded a video, and I apologize for that. There's a few things going on right now. One, as you know, school's starting or has already started for you, and this summer there's been a lot of band camp going on, and before I could fit it in because there were just summer rehearsals, but the last few weeks it's been very tedious, up early, home late kind of thing, so I didn't really get a chance to do an update, a clitoris, nothing. So I apologize, although all the previously announced things in the last update video are still going into effect, but me and Epic just haven't had time to talk and sit and talk about some of these things. Holy crap, I can't talk. But I'm going to do something new. I've hit an amount of subscribers that really surprises me. I didn't really think that I'd be able to make this far. I'm almost at 20. And I want to thank you guys for that. My channel's gotten almost 500 views. We're at 400 plus right now. So I thought I'd give you guys a little special treat. I was at Walmart the other day, and I saw something that caught my eye. It's called The Quest for the Diamond Sword. And I don't know how many of you know about this, but it's a Minecraft gamer's adventure based off of, Minecraft. And it's an unofficial novel. Mojang hasn't really been like, oh, this is awesome, let's fund this. And it's written by Winter Morgan, who isn't necessarily the author. He took these compilations of people's ideas and mixed them together and put it all under one pen name. So Winter Morgan, on the back of the book, he doesn't take any credit for it. And they did a wonderful job. So I'm going to read you the first chapter, and I'm going to try to, as often as possible, upload each chapter. I'm going to shoot for every other day. That way I can read the chapter and then go through and upload it. Alright? So without further ado, let's get started. Here we go, guys. This first chapter is called Life on the Farm. Steve wasn't a risk taker. He lived a simple life on a flourishing wheat farm where he grew carrots, potatoes, and pumpkins and bred pigs. Afternoons were spent talking to Elliot the blacksmith or Avery the librarian, who lived in the nearby village. In the village, he'd trade wheat and coal for emeralds. He used the emeralds to adorn the walls of his home, yet that morning he decided to head to town and exchange some of his extra emeralds for iron. Steve wanted to craft iron armor. Although he had never planned on using it, he was cautious and knew it was important to have armor. He also liked crafting things. Elliot was in his shop when Steve arrived and said, "Hi, Steve. Looking for more emeralds?" "No," Steve took out the emeralds. "I have too many. I'd like to exchange them for some iron ingots." "What are you going to do with the iron?" Elliot asked as he gave Steve the blocks. "Build another golem? You were so nice to build that for our village." "Thanks, but I want to craft some armor," replied Steve. "Are you going on an adventure?" Elliot couldn't believe his ears. Steve was the last person he'd expect to want armor or go on an adventure. "I hope not," Steve smiled. "I just thought it would be good to have in my inventory." "Enjoy crafting, Steve." Elliot gave him the iron ingots. On the way home, Steve ran into Avery the librarian, who said, "You should come by the library, Steve. We have lots of new books." "I can't today," he told her. "I'm crafting armor." "How exciting!" exclaimed Avery. "Are you planning an adventure?" "You know me," Steve remarked. "I like to stay out of trouble and stick close to home." "Sometimes people don't plan adventures. They just happen." Avery had read every adventure tale in the library. She loved those stories. "That's true," Steve smiled at Avery, "but I'd rather just keep the armor in my inventory and read about adventures in books." Steve crafted his iron armor. He tried it on and walked around his house. "I must look like a warrior," he said to himself as he put the armor away and took a short walk before dusk. Steve would never venture out at night. He knew that was when creepers could attack him. His farm wasn't far from the water, and he walked over and looked out at the enormous blue ocean as he wondered what lands might be on the other side. He had never hopped on a boat to find out. If Steve had an adventure story to tell, it would be about the time he had once tamed an ocelot. Lost in the vast unexplored jungle, surrounded by bushes deep in the jungle biome, Steve spotted an animal racing past him towards an overgrown patch of grass and weeds. As the animal's pace slowed, he could make out its yellow fur covered in black and brownish spots. It was a wild ocelot. The ocelot's piercing green eyes stared menacingly at Steve. Steve's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to tame this wild beast. He offered the feline raw fish, which the hungry ocelot eagerly accepted. With each bite, the ocelot transformed into a tame animal. Slowly, the cat's skin took on a ginger tone until it resembled a typical tabby cat. The ocelot's tail shrunk, signifying it was no longer feral. Steve named the ocelot Snuggles. He'd be the first to admit he felt safer on the farm with Snuggles. As everyone knows, ocelots scare off creepers. Steve was afraid of creepers. Steve knew that if you were careful, you would avoid running into any creepers, skeletons, spiders, silverfish zombies, and other hostile mobs whose sole purpose was to attack. In fact, Steve had helped secure the village from a zombie attack. He built a fence all the way around the village and placed torches along the main street, so all the land inside the wall was brightly lit day and night. This way, he could be sure that zombies wouldn't spawn in his village. As Elliot the blacksmith mentioned, Steve had also built an iron golem to protect them. He placed iron blocks in a pumpkin on the ground and watched as the tough, mighty beast got to its feet. As Steve watched the monstrous stone creature lumber towards the village, he was sure it would be able to keep him and his villager friends safe from zombies and other mobs. When he wasn't protecting his home from predators, Steve spent his time making coal out of wood. He traded the coal with Elliot the blacksmith for pickaxes, which he used for mining. He also traded his wheat for cookies from John the village farmer. When he mined for gold, he usually traded it for books with Avery the librarian. Between the villagers and the farm, he had all his needs provided for and a safe place to sleep every night. He loved coming back to the farm and hearing Snuggles meow as the ocelot relaxed in the greenery. When night began to fall, Steve immediately got into his wool bed. Nighttime was the most vulnerable time. As the sun sank in the sky, the shadows grew and the well-lit areas became darker until Steve's village was the only place bright enough that the mobs wouldn't spawn there. But outside the walls, he could always hear the zombies groaning and the strange skittering sounds of spiders. If you weren't in your bed when night fell, you were pretty much an open target, but a well-built bed would keep you safe until daybreak. When dusk approached, Steve was always safely in his bed at the farm. Once Steve saw a tall, dark Enderman with a purple aura when he was out at dusk, but he knew not to stare. He safely made his escape and learned his lesson. There was no reason to take chances. But that night, as Steve slept in his comfort of his bed, he heard strange noises coming from the village. The villagers were in trouble, and as Steve listened to the groans and the sound of wood breaking, he knew it would only be one thing: a zombie attack. He tried to convince himself that he was just hearing things and they were fine, but the noises wouldn't stop. He imagined going into town and seeing the villagers turn into zombies, and he grabbed his clock to see how much time he had before morning. It was still so early. Steve clutched his clock tightly, wondering if he could wait until morning. But as he felt the clock tick in his hands and he heard the villagers' cries, Steve knew he had to help right away. And since Elliot knew that Steve had the armor, he was probably waiting helplessly for Steve to attack the zombies. The other villagers were also Steve's good friends. He liked villagers better than other explorers like him, because they couldn't be griefers and couldn't harm him. They had jobs and lived and worked together in the village, growing their crops and making useful things to trade. They followed predictable routines and never strayed far from home, but they helped one another and never caused any havoc in his life. Griefers were wanderers who spent their time playing pranks on other explorers and generally making trouble. They intentionally did bad things to other people to steal more stuff for themselves. There were some griefers who just picked on folks because they thought it was fun and they liked tricking people. They'd use TNT to destroy a house, or lie and say they needed help, and then attack. Steve didn't want to lose his house or his stuff to any griefers, so he was careful not to trust anyone but his villager friends. And now zombies were attacking them. Steve had to help. He tried to convince himself that the iron golem could handle the zombies, but the desperate cries from the villagers meant the golem wasn't powerful enough to defeat the zombies on its own. Or even worse, something had happened to the stone creature. Steve thought of Avery and the books she had gotten from her. He could imagine the zombie overpowering her as she raced through the streets in her flowing white robe. He wondered if the zombies were destroying John the farmer's crops. He imagined Elliot trying to hide in his blacksmith shop from the vicious monsters. The cries grew louder and the images of his friends being attacked by zombies swirled around in his panicked mind. Steve knew he had to help them. If he didn't do something heroic soon, he would be a non-good coward who let the village get destroyed. Although it defied all of his instincts to avoid danger, Steve threw off his covers and got out of bed. He checked the room for spiders and creepers, then went to his chest to get ready. For the first time, he suited up in all the armor he had made, which he loved having but never thought he'd use. Luckily, Steve had a well-stocked inventory. Since he never battled, he just collected armor. He had this inventory of swords and other tools to protect himself. He took out his compass, iron sword, bow, and armor from his inventory. Then he paused and grabbed his special gold sword, just in case he needed it. His hand shook. His heart raced. He was scared. It was the moment Steve had always feared, and now he was living it. Alright, guys, that was kind of suspenseful and a little intimidating. Steve seems like a cowering pussy. But if you guys enjoyed that, like, comment, subscribe, and of course share this with all your friends. I mean, let's get that subscribers into the triple digits. I mean, I want to see hundreds of you guys just constantly checking out my channel. But I mean, if you guys want this book, I'm sure you can find it online or at Walmart. It was $7 at Walmart. But go ahead, give it a shot. The book's really good so far. I'm like 8 chapters in. So again, like, comment, subscribe, and this is Kills for Food. Over and out.